Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the industry panel. I'm Tim Crosby, your moderator for today. Get you a hamburger. It'll make this meeting go a lot better if you're eating. I tried to get beer, but nobody would give me any, so that really makes it go better. We got a great panel here today. They've all agreed to come. I went out when I selected the folks to come to be on the panel. I reached out to industry and asked for some really deep, strategic thinking people. They all said they couldn't come, and these guys showed up. So, no, I'm really pleased and honored to have each of them here. You know, these things, Quad A, we love them, but for executives at this level, every minute of their hour is taken in what we affectionately call speed dating, running from one meeting to another for 3 days solid. So for them to take the time out to come be with us to do this is very much appreciated, and we thank you. Now, if you don't ask questions, we have payment for questions, so if you ask a good question, you'll get paid. First is I just want to introduce the panel. Rather than going through a bunch of letting them do charts and all that, we decided we'd jump right into the questions. First, I want to introduce Chris Emerson, the president of Airbus Helicopters. Second is Jeff Palumbo. It's going to take me about 3 breaths to get all this out. Sector Vice President, General Manager, Land and Avionics, C4ISR, Northrop Grumman Mission Systems, Walmart, Paycom, something else. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for being here. Lisa Atherton from Bell Helicopter, Executive Vice President for Military Business, Bell Helicopter Textron. Sam Maida, my buddy Sam, standing in because his boss got called away at the last minute. But Sam, thanks for being here. Sam is the President of Sikorsky Defense Systems and Services, excuse me. Need my glasses. Last but not least is my non-golfing buddy Dave Coopersmith, Vice President, General Manager, Vertical Lift Division, Senior Site Executive, Boeing, Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so let's open it up to questions. If you don't have good questions, then we'll make some up. Anybody got a question? I'll come to you if you got a question. All right, bag of popcorn for a question. Who's got a question? Nobody? All right, I'm gonna have to eat the popcorn. This is no fun. Rob Barry, you got a question? All right, my man, he wanted some popcorn.
I'll give him a popcorn to Paul. Thank you, sir. So push on the part of the government as part of better buying power to outsource some work that may have traditionally been done by the OEMs seems to be increasing industry's awareness of data rights and intellectual property and the like, and sometimes creating challenges in our sustainment programs. Maybe generally, can you speak to how you're seeing that in industry and propose perhaps any potential solutions to that?
Anybody want to jump on that hand grenade?
I don't have a microphone. No.
You don't want a microphone.
I don't have a microphone.
Okay, I'll start, and then teammate, you want to?
Teammate, sure, absolutely. We'll talk about.
I'll go first, and then I think you're right, Colonel. I think there is additional pressure in the system as we try and find our way to understanding exactly what the rights are of the government as we develop programs, but also protecting the intellectual property that we have invested in and continue to invest in and continue to be encouraged to invest in. So there's this balance between the interest of the customer and running a healthy business within the context of this monopsony, which puts pressure on all of us. I think at the end of the day, we're going to have to continue to have the dialogue about it and find our way to where it makes sense, because I also believe you are very well-informed customers and you understand having a healthy, vibrant industry base that is investing a lot of money just from the companies up here. You want that balance. And so I think we're going to continue to have to find our way to work together to figure out what is in the best interest of both parties.
Thanks, Coop. Just add one maybe additional point to that, which is all of us at some level or another work for publicly traded corporations. And so when we go and we make the investment that Coop's talking about, we go and talk to boards of directors. And in order to be able to break away that money and allow the shareholders allowing us to reinvest it in our business, we have to show them a return, right? To make sure that they understand that they're getting value for their investment. And for us to be able to show that return, we have to show that the intellectual property, the know-how, and all the things that we've invested in will have some long-term, if not medium-term type of payoff for them. Because we're all competing for resources, even within our companies, to be able to apply them to our special programs that we want to see to fruition. And one of the things that the government can do to help is make sure that the rules of the game when it comes to intellectual property rights are known up front. I mean, sometimes you get trends and you get things, and different times the government becomes more aggressive and less aggressive. We're making bets. Coop and I have a program together where we're investing a significant amount of money, and we're making bets that we expect 40, 50, 60 years will be the payoff sometimes. And it's hard to do that in an environment where the rules or the trends keep kind of changing.
And
well,
I'm sorry. You asked a program question, but at the same time, what happens and what's very important is this ends up being an acquisition and a contracts discussion. And that's what gets industry wrapped around the axle, because the business, the program is looking for certain capabilities for sustainment. And when you start to read the verbiage that comes across in terms and conditions in the negotiation, that's when we end up in a legal discussion versus a sustainment discussion. And at some point in time, industry has to be comfortable that our customer isn't looking to take the IP and hand it to each of the 5 up here on chairs, but that's what the documentation says. And somehow we got to be able to ratchet that back so that we understand what the actual purpose is. And I think you'll get a lot more support if we have that understanding and that contractual understanding.
I guess I'm the odd man out here, so what I could offer up is any kind of advice. We are a commercial off-the-shelf. Lakota is a commercial product. The CLS support package that comes along with the Lakota is based off of a lot of commercial investment that we've made around the world, supporting a worldwide fleet of 145 aircraft that the U.S. Army takes benefit of. Now, you're absolutely right, the contracting element of it. So we knew what the customer wanted. How could we put it into a contractual vehicle that ensured you maintain your commerciality, but met all of the requirements? And this is something that actually we've been going through for 10 years, a decade now with Lakota. And I think today we're probably the furthest along with the government starting to understand the differences between FAR 12 and FAR 15, and being able to come under a commercial contract for what they need. So on our side, it's been exactly at the root of this on both the product and support, but it's been 10 years.
Next question comes from the field. Let's see, this time you get a cigar.
Can we ask questions?
No.
There's been a lot of discussion that performance-based logistics is working so well for the Navy. Mm-hmm. Why doesn't the Army adapt that? What's your views on that?
So we have a pretty successful PBL that we have on every Romeo and every Sierra. Almost 600 aircraft on the Navy side is under a full tip-to-tail from actually provided by a joint venture between Sikorsky and Lockheed Martin, obviously now part of the same company, and it's been very successful. I think ultimately what it comes down to is getting people to think differently about support and what you're paying for. And we went through that evolution with the Navy, where we started to get that sort of buy-in and belief that what we're paying for is readiness, and what you're paying for is not the part on the shelf, just in case you need it, right, or when you need it. With the Navy, it grew on success, and so we started off with 10 components, 12 components that we had, and then we added to it, and now we've gotten to the point, 11 years, 12 years into the program, where it's a tip to tail. I think there's a significant opportunity. We've been pretty vocal at Sikorsky about the benefits that we can bring to the Army with the tip to tail with a performance-based logistics program on the Black Hawk. We have a book, right, a recipe that we've used successfully with the Navy that we're looking for. And I think actually one of the areas that's gaining momentum is how much money the government and the DoD stands to save with performance-based logistics. So even if people are sort of conceptually opposed to it for policy or for other reasons, doctrinal reasons, I think the fiscal reality that all of us are now starting to live in, and certainly my biggest customer is starting to live in, is starting to cause some traction about paying for readiness and not just paying for parts.
Yes, I'd echo. I think the Army should look strongly at PBL, but PBL means different things to you and to you and to you. I mean, PBL has different connotations, and it can't be a fill rate. You got to do it in the model that Sam's talking about, where it's full tip to tail for readiness, but it takes a long 10, 11, 12 years in order to get there. And you got to fund readiness. So you can't just put a contract in place and expect to get it without funding it. So I think where the Navy's had success is where they funded it. Where they haven't, it's been the wrong contract vehicle in the funding process.
I would just add, I think we have a spectrum of PBL, and I think each one of our customers, it is a different place in what they're comfortable with. Some of our international customers, it is a total PBL. It is through life support. And then we have other customers that are only ready for transactional spares. And so I think we continue to have to adapt to the needs of our customer, but also develop that trust so that they understand by having industry do more, they can trust that we're going to be as successful as they have been. The other thing, frankly, I like about a strong PBL is the feedback loop that forces to continually improve reliability and maintainability by having that with the business physics driving us to be forced to become more profitable by being more reliable and more sustainable.
There's also a cultural aspect. We've been 10 years together doing a performance-based contract, and we are now transitioning to a fill rates model. And what we see is there's a cultural change. Repairs versus new. That's a major driver, but you go back to that culture of, well, all I need to do is fill shelves with parts, and I'll maintain the aircraft. Well, it's much more sophisticated. We can learn that, in this is part of our job. We know exactly that mix of what to repair, what to order new, when, and we can bring that performance down and the cost down and bring that benefit to the customer.
Oh, he's got more. Follow up. You get back popcorn and go with the follow up. I get another one? You get back popcorn and go with the follow up.
How important is it to design for PBL? Because most of what you've done is applied it after the fact. And for future vertical lift and stuff, it seems like designing for for performance-based logistics would have a big impact.
So, for all of the industry partners here, we're coin operated at the end of the day, right? And so when you talk about designing for PBL, is there a cost to do that? And if you're in a competitive program, don't you have to take that into account? And if you're not going to get evaluated credit for it, while it's a wonderful story, it could prevent you from being that contractor that's selected. So it's really our customer has to identify what the value is to them and evaluate it accordingly. And it's very difficult because we try to get our arms wrapped around total life cycle costs, and that's really what's going to drive all of this. So designing for PBL is a great idea. Is there cost associated with it? Likely that there is. Is industry incentivized to do that is the real question. At the end of the day, we have to make decisions not only based on what's best for the customer, but what actually they've asked for, what the requirements are. So I agree with you. If you design from the get-go for PBL, we'll certainly have a better outcome, but the question is, has the customer valued that on day one or not?
In my former life, if I could add just a little bit of that, there's two things that drive that. One is the procurement agent is different than the sustainment. There's different funding lines, so that Jeff's point is so right on target about the incentivization to do that. It's a challenge to compel them to be incentivized when you know that you're not going to be rewarded for it. Okay, anybody else? Next? Yes, sir. Popcorn time. Did you know that I got into the popcorn environment? I own stock in Orville Redenbacher.
I'll forgive you for not giving me the cigar, but James Drew from Flight Global. Could I ask you about future vertical lift a little bit? You've all responded to the capability sets that were put out. Your companies have. We had two of them. We had the lighter one, which when you actually look at the requirements, they really stuffed a lot of requirements into that capability set one. It's almost a morphing of two different capability sets. And then you've got capability set 3, which you've been working on in joint multi-role. What's your indication of where the Army's going to go first? Where do you want them to go first? And then maybe if you could give us a few pie-in-the-sky comments about how you're looking at the very large future vertical lift aircraft way out in the future. How are you going to address that problem? And I know that the capability set 5, which is the largest one, is a C-17 type of aircraft. How are you going to achieve something on that scale and that grand, in the 2060 timeframe or wherever they're planning for that?
Now there's a hand grenade. No matter what you answer on that one, you're going to upset somebody. So Lisa, just go for it, guy.
All right. So, no secret, right? We're all in on V-280 Valor Cape Set 3. I think that's where the Army needs to go first. They've made their declaration of what they're going to do with the lighter mission in the near term, and so Capability Set 3 meets the current requirements. They've asked us to invest in this JMR TD for the last 6 years leading up to that. So with that, that's your part one, right? And you're typing rapidly. My name is Dave Cooper Smith. Bell Helicopter.
And I don't want any more Army business.
So what was part 2 of your question? Oh yeah, I wanted to go Capability Set 3. To the heavy out into the future. And your questions are on why or how would we get there? No. I mean, look, everybody on this stage has invested hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 5 years, and we are waiting to find out what the Army's going to do with this one. It's a bit of a long drive for us to invest at the levels for that for 2060. That's not to say that the technologies that we're doing right now couldn't parlay into that. That's the whole concept of future vertical lift. So, I mean, I think I would like to see, and again, it's no secret where Bell sits on this, we need to move faster. We can't wait till 2030 for Capability Set 3, where our enemies are doing turns inside of us. So we should be entering a milestone B sooner and getting this capability out to the warfighter sooner, and then move on to Capability Set 5.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so, obviously a lot of focus and energy on Capability Set 3 with our teaming together with Boeing and Coop here on that Cape set. To be honest, we've invested and developed technology that we think has a scalability to be able to cover larger than the one capability set that we're teamed on. So, for us, the idea is to be able to create technologies that have that scalability, so that if there's variation in requirements or variation in priority, we can meet it. I can tell you, though, to answer the kind of maybe an underlying question, we are all in on Capability Set 3. We've had a lot of investment. We're building an aircraft, which is exciting, right, in any kind of development program. In the event that priorities change, we'll have to be flexible. One of the things we need is requirement stability. Lisa talked about the importance of getting on with a program. We also need some requirements to be stable, because if we're constantly sort of changing the target when it comes to things like range, and we're going to end up continuing kind of reinvesting in re-engineering work that needs to be done, and at some point those resources could be better used on other projects and other programs, and I don't think that's what the Army's looking for, and I don't think that's what the Army wants.
Yeah, I'd echo both, actually. I think we all agree we want to go faster than currently is being talked about. We are all into Cape Set 3. My comment on heavy is we at Boeing continue to invest and partner with our Army customer on continuing to mature, develop, and improve the CH-47 and its variants, and we think it's got tremendous capability and tremendous legs. I would also echo that it's kind of a bit of a fog right now, and so we're looking for clarity in the future, and right now we're all investing into Cape Set 3. And so I think you'll see that beyond what we think is great additional capability in the Chinook, beyond that, looking at super heavy at this time is probably premature for us to be placing big bets.
We're still looking for AAS, so.
I think there's an entirely different angle here also. I think industry may be a bit uncomfortable with the whole acquisition and procurement cycle. We are very comfortable with traditional legacy, this is how programs are specified, here's what the acquisition strategy looks like, this is what the timelines are associated with it. This, I believe, is entirely different than what we've seen before. And we have a lot of industry looking for, tell me what the requirements are, make sure these things become stable. This is how we actually go out and we want to figure out how to vector our investments in the right place. And I think because we have such a changing environment that maybe industry is a little off kilter right now in terms of what this is going to look like 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years from now. And I think that's going to be, I think this is one of the changing points for us in terms of acquisition as industry partners. What is it going to mean to actually keep up in lieu of making one particular system and then making that system for the next 10 years? I think we're going to see something entirely different this time.
Yes, sir. On the way. You know, most of y'all remember me as being a shy, reserved guy before I retired. I'm finding out this is really hard to be a moderator and keep my tongue.
Thank you for the popcorn. My question is, what opportunities do you foresee in terms of avionics to repurpose them potentially in the near term and the far term to help with mission capability for the Army?
I can add to that.
You're going to ask more questions?
I'm going to ask him a question. We've talked about repurposing avionics and in particular sensors that are on airplanes. And I think we have so many federated sensors on airplanes that we're not getting the bang for the buck of what's out there. So we have things that do specific jobs. And I think we need to multi-purpose sensors, processors, how we take that information. You know, we've been collectively chasing degraded visual environment and integrated ASE and situational awareness and offboarding that information. And I believe that all of that capability actually lives on our airplanes today with legacy systems, yet we don't have them connected. And when we do, we're trying to add hardware to do that next level of solution. I think we got to be more innovative, figure out how do we do this with software packages and solutions, utilize the systems that are already on airplanes. We can't afford to swap out everything that's on an airplane, but I think those are kind of the sweet spots for multi-purpose, multispectral, multifunction, and then figure out how to get the avionics to work together as a team and provide, you know, an unambiguous set of information versus the stovepipe data that we send to pilots today.
I would just add, I think this is an area where, you know, we're in an ever-changing environment. The threat is constantly changing. Our customers need to constantly be adapting and changing to all kinds of threats that weren't necessarily anticipated. And so when you look at Moore's Law and we keep getting additional processing capability, whether it's integrating sensors, I think there's huge upside in data analytics. Processing and in real time understanding what we already know much better. Back to the PBL, going towards autometrics where we're getting real-time information off the airplane so that we feed it back and are ready to turn that airplane. We do it now in the commercial world. We can do it more in our world. Cyber is going to be another real challenge for us. Anti-tamper, we're going to have to mature our systems so that we can adapt and change inside these airframes for many years, well inside the OODA loop of our enemies.
Anybody else? Next question. Who's up? Don't make me dig out my questions. They're pretty boring. Oh, Lynn's got one. You gotta have your popcorn. I gotta get rid of it.
Since you brought up cyber, how does the cyber threat, with or without effective definitions from OSD and below, affect the way you are having to validate your systems, your subs, your primes, all that sort of thing? Or how's that going to affect your business?
Go ahead, I got one.
I will take up the rest of the time.
First of all, thank you for the question. It's honestly becoming one of the more challenging aspects of, getting under contract. Whether it's a multi-year, which some of our companies have done, we're on numerous iterations of it. The changing requirements in this area and not having a definition, and we all work for big companies, and you change your requirement for Sikorsky aircraft, we got enough smart people, we'll figure it out. Some of the requirements reach down deep into the supply chain, and so you not only, I think, have to assess what's the nature of the threat realistically and how far down does it go in the supply chain, but what level of cost and expense is our customer willing to pay for to make sure that we have the right level of cybersecurity? And the fear that I have and the concern I have is it's not a one-size-fits-all type of solutions. Different companies work with different technologies. A machine shop has a different vulnerability than maybe our top system supplier. And so making sure that there's a specifically catered requirement, I would tell you a requirement is needed. I think it'd be naive to think that that's not a vulnerability that we need to be worried about. But having more tailoring around specific nature of threats and the level of supply and the level of threat rather than one size fits all, I think might be a better solution, more cost effective, and ultimately will lead to less vulnerable system.
Yeah, I can't add. Sam said that great. I mean, we've got to be able to understand what the requirement is and how far down in the supply chain you want to go. I guess the concern I had was the swiftness with which they said we're going to declare and do this now, immediately effective for every contract heretofore. And it just ground us to a halt, where we were already ground to a halt for a myriad of other things. So getting alignment inside the system and rolling that out perhaps in a phased way, and also holding industry to the standard ahead of the government being able to meet that same standard was a bit of a challenge as well. So,
Jeff, I can see your tongue's bleeding. Jump on it, baby.
No, it needs to be a shared responsibility, which I think is the largest problem. So any one of our organizations has our own mindset of protecting systems straight through the supply base to once something is delivered to the field, how do we make sure that it is secure? But there is somewhat of a moving target right now. And all of a sudden, if you have a new set of requirements that pop up in an existing system, just like the question before of have you designed to PBL? Well, if you haven't designed to certain things with your airplane or your avionics, it's not like you're going to be able to inject it into the architecture that's already in place. So there's got to be that shared responsibility and discussion attached to that also.
Okay, next question. My popcorn not going in anymore. He's hungry. He's already had a smoke. Now he needs more popcorn.
And the civil sector pretty much has moved to a development assurance approach for development. 4754A, integrated modular avionics. The military still uses a qualification assurance, which is after the fact. This is much akin to what happened in the late 80s and early 90s with manufacturing. All the quality assurance was inspections, right? Do you believe that the development assurance approach, which we're using in the commercial sector, with integrated modular avionics, aircraft level, software, hardware, all integrated, is that an approach that the Army and the military could go to so that they would do the development assurance before they started instead of trying to qualify assurance after the fact?
I'll just say on the commercial side, absolutely, and we see the advantage. There is the cost advantage. Back to the avionics question, the modular approach gives us the flexibility. At Airbus, we're rolling out a complete same flight deck for all of our helicopters, because it's ease of pilot transitioning, but also most important, it's safety. Pilots are familiar with what they're looking at, where information is. As technology now, we're seeing this, and this is an issue we've dealt commercially. By the time we would develop a system, the technology had already gone 2 steps ahead. And being modular enables us to rapidly keep up, try, at least chase after the technology. And so this is the commercial approach. On the military side, I'll let you guys talk about it.
I'm gonna break a promise to myself. I said I wouldn't do a Northrop commercial. The Army is doing that in pockets, and so there is a development going on right now for UH-60 Victor cockpit, for instance, and it is using those developmental tools, and it has set up modularity from both a hardware and a software perspective, because one of the things that's been most difficult, not only for the Army, but across the services, is every time we want to make changes and we crack open the OFP, just start adding time. We're going to start adding years to be able to do block changes. So your question associated with modularity and being able to do that design work up front is being done in pockets. This is one example of it. And I think this is going to offer a change. By the way, it's very difficult because we're changing completely the way the Army's done business before. So it's a difficult program. I think they're stepping out and offering that opportunity to industry, and I think this is going to be their first successful shot at it.
So I'd piggyback a little bit on, not on the avionics in particular, but just on design tools, right? In FVL, we're pushing the envelope, all of us, on using new 3D tooling, 3D software, all the new design techniques. The Army's going to have to catch up with us when we're ready to kind of push that across. We're not doing paper anymore. We're creating in environments where we're all kind of dialing in. My son does Minecraft on the computer with folks halfway around the world. That's kind of what our guys are doing when they're building this equipment. So the Army's going to have to catch up with us a little bit in the design techniques. Yeah, and the test point.
Another question. Anybody else? Last bag of popcorn here. More questions. One more in the back. Way in the back. Hold on. He saw the popcorn machine was empty.
I keep handing it back to you, hoping I won't get it.
Thank you, sir. John Stow, JH&A Software Architecture. Question about the shift in architectures, particularly with the 60 Victors. The architecture is not owned by the OEM that originally manufactured the helicopter. So in this case, it ushers in the possibility of a government architected or a government owned architecture that industry supplies to in various different combinations. How does industry feel about the idea of a government owned architecture on future vertical lift? Thank you.
I'll provide an answer. It's not. This is not future vertical lift discussion for me. This is an open architecture discussion, because I think we've been talking about open architecture and well-defined ICDs, and they have been buzzwords absolutely forever. And I think we've finally gotten to the point where it's becoming a reality. So when you provide open system architecture, for the first time, our customer is going to have some autonomy. They're going to have the ability to make changes, which is very different for us, for industry. Our business model has always been, I'm going to win this initial business, and then I'm going to own this business for the next 20, 30 years. And when you start an open architecture system, our customer will now have the ability to make changes on their own, in particular, if we look at Victor. But I think there's also benefit to industry, because a lot of us get locked out of things. So if there's a particular platform, you don't get to play as industry. If you're a small business and you've created a better system, a more reliable system, something that weighs less, something that's higher performance, it's very difficult for you to get your system and your product integrated with a legacy airplane. I think once we start to get to that open architecture, it continues to permit all of industry to be able to play on that platform. It enables all of industry to be encouraged to continue to invest in lieu of, hey, I have this great idea, but I know I'm never going to be able to get on this airplane, and therefore I'm going to go do something else. So I just think there's an industry positive and there's an industry challenge attached to your question.
If I could, so I see it a little bit of an inevitability in the sense that I think, again, customers made a choice here, right, on open architecture, and the DoD overall an open architecture. I'm not as happy with what happened on the Victor.
That makes me happy.
The two things I would say is, going back to the question that the Colonel asked about investment, right, and making sure, because we as OEMs do make significant amounts of investment, talent, resources, whatever it takes in some of the platforms that we have. And for us, if open architecture is the way, and the customer chooses to have something where at any given day, a supplier can come onto the platform, it might change some of our appetite for investing in those systems that we put on the aircraft. The second point is it's important, hopefully, to keep connection with the OEM as we even integrate other suppliers and other systems onto the aircraft. Nobody understands the aircraft as well as the OEM. So while we might not be able to provide all of the systems because of the open architecture approach, I think you could have some bad outcomes, bad consequences from a cost, expense, risk standpoint if the OEM is completely shut out and left out of the product, because, again, you're installing onto a system, a weapons system and a weapons platform with something as complex as a helicopter or rotorcraft. It's, I know we've all gotten used to plug and play, and, we've all used that in various areas in this IT-oriented world, but these are complex weapon systems. I think it's important to have a connection or some sort of bridge back to the OEM to make sure that the integration and the impact and the effects on the rest of the helicopter, the rest of the rotorcraft are known.
Yeah, I agree, Sam. I think it's inevitable. We're going there. It's become an app world. And in the future, we're going to have to be able to react quickly and rapidly to the threat that the enemy has. And so, regardless of the industry partner, we've got to have that open architecture in order to be able to move quick. Because a lot of our systems, we've got ones that are 20, 30, 40 years old. And to be able to do that and react quickly to what we're seeing pop up around the world, it's frankly dang near impossible. So it's coming. We just have to figure out how it makes good business sense for all of us up here on the stage.
Anybody else? Next question.
No popcorn.
This fits your image. You get the box because you're going to have the last question.
So the government is interested in having the .coms and the commercial companies contribute and go into and providing apps and everything else. They also have their investment, their IP, their all that stuff. How can the government enter into that and do it in such a manner that allows it to happen? Because I think it doesn't seem like, based on history and behavior, they can get there. So what would you suggest that the government does to truly enable that commercial use into military product?
There's education on the procurement side, on the acquisition side. It's a different mindset when you're coming from a commercial approach. And I think that's what the DoD is doing today. They're trying to pull in out of industry commercial-minded acquisition folks who, when they're looking to buying something, they're not thinking FAR 15 and, oh, by the way, it's all about cost and pricing, right? Commercial world, there's no such things as cost. There's a commercial price. It's how much are you selling it for? I'm going to sell it for, maybe I'm 1% lower. It's about price. It's not about cost. And until they get there, and boy, it's been a long road, a lot of sweat lost on that approach. I thought we had a FAR 12, and then it turned to a FAR 15, and then we build up and spend a lot of money trying to comply with FAR 15 for something that really is commercial, because we sell that helicopter commercially. So I think there's education that's going to be needed.
I think you've got to go through OEMs. I think the whole dynamic is going to be an interesting evolution when we talk about data rights when we talk about our contracting speed, when we talk about all of the regulations and compliance issues that we have to deal with, and by the way, basically limitations on profit margins. If I'm many of these .com companies, I'm not sure this is the most attractive business that they want to be in. And so I think there has to be some business physics work on how we're going to get to the place our customers need to go in a constantly changing, evolving world that isn't, frankly, used to real commercial stuff. Now, I loved when General Crosby, when he would take 7 people or 8 people to Applebee's, even he would accept the 18% fee on the bill.
And I always paid it. You never brought it up.
You know, just one of the things that I think is very instructive in this dialogue when it comes to .com and Silicon Valley, it's interesting. The DoD is actively reaching out and trying to attract as many .com companies as possible. I won't call it dragging them to the altar, right? But they're trying to actively go out and recruit these companies. These companies are not showing up at the doorstep of the DoD because of some market-based opportunity. And so it's instructive to me that these companies will react when they see an attractive market for all the reasons that Dave talked about and talked about here, creating the conditions for a company that's invested billions of dollars of its resources to gain a reward on its innovation and its profit. I think short of doing that, they will attract companies that are interested in some level of business from Silicon Valley. It might just not be the companies that you and I rely upon every day to organize our affairs or get out of the bed in the morning.
And I think it'll be entertaining to kind of watch the movie when all of a sudden someone gets handed a contract that talks about specialty metals, and you're responsible for where all your specialty metals comes from and what they are, and cybersecurity and ITAR and all those other bizarre requirements that get levied upon us, small business concerns, which are a really spectacular part of not only our DoD business but also our economy. What happens when all of a sudden these things get levied on those companies? Do their heads explode? Or do they go back to what John said, I'm not sure this is the right business case for me. I'm not sure what I do with this. And the answer may be somewhere in between, where it's not the behemoths that you would expect to be involved. Maybe it's more niche type companies that show up with that capability.
You might see the government start treating them differently, right? And so what does that mean for us when they start treating them differently to attract them into the business case?
Agree.
Right?
We're going to rebrand as Sikorsky.com when that happens.
Again, the former government guy throwing in as I'm supposed to be just a moderator, but the caution I give is when the government quite often thinks they want to do this, then they don't resource it properly and become an integrator, and they haven't resourced to be an integrator. So you folks know how to do that. Folks, that kind of runs out of our time, and I want to appreciate all your attendance and your interest today and your good questions. I really want to thank this lady and these gentlemen up here. Again, you can see why they're in the positions that they're in. They're thinking strategically. The responses to your questions, they're not the itches and the little programmatic things that we're talking about their individual programs. They're looking at the entire strategic environment, and I sincerely appreciate y'all being here and being a part of this today. Thank you.